1, 2, 3, go.
Hello, my name is Craig Tarwater, and I'd like to welcome you to this video on how to play great rock guitar very simply and very convincingly. And this particular tape is level 1. So we will be doing very simple things, and hopefully you'll be able to interpret these from what you're seeing in front of you, along with all the information that I'm going to talk about. So the first thing we need to do is give you some tune-up notes of, we could give all 6 strings, but I think what I'll do is just give you the A string. That's what Robin Ford does, and he knows what's best. Okay, so here's your 5th string without overdrive. This is an A. And we'll give this to you one more time. For those of you who would like to have it, we'll go ahead and give you a 12th fret harmonic also. Okay, the first thing we'd like to discuss and illustrate is the simple rhythms, and in order to do that, the first thing we should do is show you the chord shapes, and we'll show you first a chart patterned after a very popular book called Fretboard Logic. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to show you is this chart. We're going to explain what it means. All right, what we have here is we have a C form, and this is all pertaining first to the key of C. That happens to be the key that our opening number was in. So we're going to show you a C form, which basically if you play an open C chord in the open position, which you should already know, if you play it with the last 3 fingers, it will be in other places on this chart. The first place it actually appears is in the key of A at 9th position. This is if you're reading from left to right or from top to bottom. It also appears in the key of G at 7th position. It appears in the key of E in the 4th position, and it appears in the key of D in the 2nd position. Okay? So just to make sure that there's some clarity before we go away from this chart, in the key of C, you can play a C form, which is a C shape, in the open position. Then, staying in the key of C, you can play an A form in the 3rd position, which is the shape of an open A chord, only it's a bar chord. In other words, this is all about bar chords, just to make sure you understand. The 3rd one is the G form. So the G form C shape is in the 5th position. The E form shape is next, and it's in the 8th position. That's the most common bar chord. Almost everyone knows that one if they know bar chords at all. The D form is the last one. I might tell you that the G form and the D form are both really abbreviated forms, and we'll show that to you next when we go on to this chart of common practical chord shapes. Okay, what we have here are the 5 chord shapes around which all the scales that you'll be using are also centered. So the first thing that happens here, for instance, in the key of C, is that chord, C form, is at the very end of the neck. It's really an open position, so the 2 1s are actually zeros. But if you learn to play that open C chord with your second, third, and fourth fingers doing the actual fretting work, then when you move it up, for instance, to a D chord, that shape there, just the number 4 finger would be on the 5th fret, and the 2 ones would be on the 2nd fret. The 2 that is circled, which is a D note, as long as you understand that the circled notes are the roots of the chords, then the 2 would be on the 3rd fret. Okay? So, as we progress up the neck, the A form major, which the roots circled are the 1st finger and the 3rd finger notes, and you notice that the 3rd finger lays down on bars. The number 1 is actually the 3rd fret, and it is identically the same position and same note that the pinky is playing on the lower shape, which is the C form. Okay? So that's what's called an A shape, and you probably already know this, but we wanted to cover it for the beginners who bought this tape. Now as we progress on up to the G form, I have made an abbreviation of what would actually happen if you play the open G chord with the last 3 fingers. Okay? So that number 4 note that's being played with the pinky is the same tone as the previous C root note. It's just that it's now played on the 8th fret. Okay? So all these shapes, as we're discussing them, they may move up and down the fingerboard at will. As long as you know the name of the circled note on either one or the other strings that's circled, you'll always be able to know the name of your chord and figure out what we're talking about here. Now as we go on up, the E form chord is a very common chord. It's one of the first bar chords shown. Okay? And the number 1 circled note is still at the 8th fret. Okay? And it's the same exact note as the number 4 on the left in the G form. So as we finally move up to the D form, what we're going to have is another abbreviated chord shape. In other words, if playing the D chord, the actual D chord itself, before we turn it into a shape, which we're calling all these shapes forms, the D chord played with the last 3 fingers, that number 1 note there, if it was moved up to the 10th fret, and this will agree with your fretboard logic chart that you were looking at earlier, that would be a C note. So in reality, then what we have is 5 different shapes of a C chord. That's the example we're using, all the way up the neck. We use a C form, an A form, a G form, an E form, and a D form. Hence, our remembering tool, the word caged. Okay, now what we just looked at, we're going to show you on the fingerboard, and then you'll be able to see what we were talking about. Okay, so here we have the first shape, which is our C chord, played without the first finger. Okay, and the reason for that is that if we move it up a fret at a time, it becomes the same shape, which we're calling a C form, but it has a different name each time we move up a fret. The name of it starts with the note our pinky's on. Here we have the 3rd fret. It's a C on the 5th string. So this would be a C sharp, this would be a D, D sharp, E. If we come back down, E, E flat, now you know where that stuff comes from, D, D flat, and C. Now the next shape we have is this is still in the key of C, mind you. The next shape we have is the A form. This is shown on the chart we had just looked at as a bar across the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings with the 3rd finger, and the 1st finger still plays the same C on the 5th string at the 3rd fret. And there we have a C chord also. So we have 2 C chords now. We have a C chord here and a C chord here. Okay, and in a little while we're going to show you the scales that go with these, because there's a scale around each one of these shapes, and this is the scale you may know in just one shape. This is going to help you eliminate the black holes on the fingerboard. The next thing we do is we take the G chord and it becomes another shape to use for another C chord. And now we're up in 5th position. So just to recap that for you, we had open position, 3rd position, 5th position, and that will agree with the fretboard logic chart we showed you earlier. Now if we take the E chord and we move it up to the same C note for the G form, which was with the pinky originally in the G form, on the 6th string at the 8th fret, we're going to have the E shape at the 8th position. Okay? And our last shape is the D chord. And these two open strings, the 5th string and the 4th string, will now be at the 10th position. Let me tune my B string down just a hair there. I have to have my guitar tech check this guitar for me. Okay, anyhow, this is our D form. D form, D shape. We can call the form and the shape one and the same. So here's our example for chords around which all of our scales center for the entire duration of this tape. We have the C shape, the A shape, that was open and 3rd position. We have the G shape, 5th position, the E shape, 8th position, and the D shape at the 10th position. Okay, so the next thing we want to do then is play a little bit of rhythm with our tape and see what happens when we use just small fragments of the major chords. They sound best, okay? So let's see how that works, and we'll play a little bit here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Turn it into a 7th chord. I'll do that in a second. See, now all I'm doing is using a C shape. Here's a 7th. Okay, now, so that illustrates the basic simple rhythm using just a few strings out of the chord, the ones that sound meaty and sound believable, because that's what we want to do, is play convincingly with the simple amount of information that we know. Okay, so there's another thing we should know also, and I'll just rewind this tape here real quick. Okie doke.
12-bar blues,
Whoops.
key of C, with a rock feel.
I have to shut up that guy for a second. This is a candid video, by the way, not a glossy production. Thank you. Okay, now the next thing, with an A form, we get what we call our moving 6th. Some people can't play this very well here, but it can be duplicated at the same pitch with the E form. When I say moving 6th, all I mean is I'm playing what you all may know as a power chord, which is just the root note, the 5th note, and then the 5th note gets moved up to the 6th note off and on. So we get this kind of effect. On the A form, we get, which we can use for all 3 chords in this 3-chord song, because that's all it has is C, F, and G. Or we can use this shape, although we really climb up the fingerboard here, and maybe if we don't want to do that because it could sound funny, we can switch from the E shape to the A shape for the F chord. So as soon as we learn our shapes, we won't have any trouble playing rhythm like this at all. It'll come perfectly naturally. In fact, you may already know that, in which case you bought the wrong tape. No, don't worry about it. Okay, so here we have the A form of G, the F form, and this is the E form. Excuse me, I said A form of G, A form of F, and the E form of C, okay? And that's the moving sixth. Before we play along with the tape, we also have this right here. Here's our G in an E form, our F in an E form, and back to our C. Also, just in case you wanted to know, and you probably did, the F can also be played right here, but it gets played, the moving sixth gets played out of the D form. So we do okay, and if we wanted to play up really high, we could do this too. So just to remove any and all doubt, let's play the moving sixth, as many possible ones for C as we can play on the guitar, okay? Basically, of course, within the first 12 frets. We may have to go over just a hair in order to get our D shape, but that's all right. So here's just the moving sixth just for C. A shape, E shape, and D shape. Then for F, we have the E shape, we have the D shape. Both of those will be repeated 2 frets higher, which we're going to do, for G. E shape for G, D shape for G, and we have the A shape for F and G. Just to clarify this, let's do one thing. When we move through the shapes, we'll see that the sounds do not change. Here's our example. C. C again. Same sound, a little bit muddier because we're up in the middle of the strings, so the sound isn't quite as bright as it is here. But it's the same pitch. Okay, here's our F, D shape. A shape, same thing happens with G, done in a D shape. And there's the A shape. Okay, the only other two that are sort of oddballs because they're down low is the F and the G. All right, what we're going to do is take these examples we just demonstrated and play them along with our tape, okay? So if you can hear it, listen for the drumstick count off. Okay, this will be the key of C. All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Mix that up with a little chord. there you have it. Now the next thing we'll have to do is we'll have to show you how these scale shapes sit around these chords so you can play some simple lead licks that sound very, very convincing with a little bit of overdrive just to cover up, you know, any uneasiness you have. You'll be able to sound really great first time out. All you have to do is learn the scales, and you should already know them. Okay, we'll do that next. All right, what you see in front of you is a chart with a graphic representation of a chord shape at the top and two shapes of scales in the same position beneath the chord shape. So we see the C chord form up on the top left hand of your screen. Below it we see the major pentatonic scale, which turns into a minor pentatonic scale if it's placed in a different spot, but that's too complicated to talk about right this second. So what we'll do is we'll tell you that there is a minor pentatonic scale at the same position and the same shape, the same site. If you'll notice, the two root notes in the C form shape are circled, as well as the exact same root notes on the major pentatonic chart below it, and the chart below that is the minor pentatonic scale. You'll also see the same two notes circled. Those are called your roots once again, and they all sit in the same spot. So for instance, if that whole thing was on second position, in other words, if your first finger was on the second fret, all the notes would be played on the second fret by the first finger. The first circled note at the top, and consequently the two grids below. These, by the way, are called grids, is what most people call these. Fingerboard graphs or grids. Okay, below that you see the same roots circled in the same exact spot, but you only see one note being played by what would have to, obviously, after a bit of investigation, be the first finger. Okay, continuing down below the major pentatonic, which is in the middle on the very left of your screen, once again, just to help you remind yourself what you're looking at. The minor pentatonic scale has the same two roots, okay? Now I made a slight little error there, which I always do. That's what everybody loves about me. I make mistakes. There are a whole line of notes to be played on the major pentatonic scale with the first finger. On the minor pentatonic scale, there is only one note to be played by the first finger. In fact, if you look, there's probably all of the notes that would be played by the third finger, which is the bottom circle in the bottom left chart, are taking place to replace the notes that are not played with the first finger. But of course now I'm getting complicated again. So let's just go on up to the A form and notice that it shares the same position as what the fourth finger is doing in the C form. Okay? So in other words, if we were in, for instance, the key of D, then our A form first finger note there will be on the 5th fret. So below the 5th fret, below the A form, you see a major pentatonic shape. And below that you see a minor pentatonic shape. Okay? The top circled note in both of those A form grids, major pentatonic and minor pentatonic, are also at the 5th fret. So what does this tell us? Just to be clear, the A form major pentatonic, if it were in this imaginary key of D, those two notes in the top center of that grid, right under the word unless, would have to be on the 4th fret, wouldn't they? Okay, so the rest of this chart follows the same logic. We go on over to the G form, and we see that we have a G form chord shape up at the top, and on the same site we have a G form major pentatonic scale, and also at the same site we have a G form minor pentatonic scale. Okay, moving on over a little further to the right, we see we have an E form, and on the same site we have a major pentatonic scale, and we also have a minor pentatonic scale. The most interesting thing, in the bottom center of your screen, the E form minor pentatonic scale, which is the second one that is clearly seen from the left, is the most common scale shape that everyone knows because it's the one that is most frequently taught. But as you can see by examining this grid for a while, there is so much more to it than what is normally taught. Still, all the while, we're going to remain simple. Okay? Moving on over to our final grid on the right-hand side of your screen, we see we have a D form shape of chord at the top right. We have underneath it a D form major pentatonic, and underneath that we have a D form minor pentatonic. A final note as you're looking at this, and perhaps we would like to show it to you one more time all the way across, just to be clear. Starting from the C form, we see a chord shape, two scale shapes in the same position. The A form next, same thing. Everything is in the same plane, the same space of the fingerboard from the top to the bottom. Okay, moving on over the G form, take a very close look at this. This is the most valuable information of all. And moving a little further over, we see the E form, and then finally we see the D form. Now, the most bold, dark notes are what I am going to demonstrate to you next. All right, these are the bold notes in your grids of the major and minor pentatonic shapes. Okay, so we start with a C, fifth string. An open fourth string, which is D. A fretted fourth string, which is an E. An open third string, which is a G. A fretted third string, which is an A. And finally, we arrive one octave higher from the note we started at, which was C, at a fretted second string, which is a C. So that scale, when played with some conviction, is like this. When played sort of hot-rodded with overdrive, sounds like this. Okay, and it gives you a definitive major sound of as opposed to a minor sound. Now let me show you the minor notes, okay? And they start on the same note, a C, and here's what we have. We have C on the fifth string, E flat on the fourth string, F on the fourth string, the same open G on the third string, with a B flat on the third string, and the same high C. So that scale, when played with some conviction, sounds like this. This gives you the minor tonality. Okay, so when it's played hot-rodded with a little bit of overdrive, you get this. Okay, so it's up to you to pick and choose the sequence of those notes you use. Okay, now if we go on up the fingerboard a little, what we have here are the A shapes. Okay, and the fingering does change, so watch closely. Here's the major pentatonic. C on the fifth string, D on the fifth string, E on the 4th string, G on the 4th string, A on the 3rd string, and the high C on the 3rd string. Okay, so it sounds like this. Okay, now the minor pentatonic scale starts on the same C, but now we go to an E flat note, which is at the 6th fret. Then we do F on the 4th string, G on the 4th string. We do a B flat on the 3rd string, and a C on the 3rd string. So that scale, when it's played with some conviction, hot rod, and overdrive, sounds like this. And that, coincidentally, is exactly the same fingering that we'll be showing you in a minute, as far as the distance between the fingers in terms of fret distance, as we will up here in the E form. But first we have to move from the A form to the G form. Okay, and we have two shapes to examine. So the G form starts with the pinky on the 8th fret, 6th string, and still uses the same notes that we used back in the open position. It uses a C, a D on the 5th string, an E, a G on the 4th string, an A on the 4th string, and a C on the 3rd string. So it sounds like this. Okay, now, the minor pentatonic scale is still at the same site as I've been explaining all along, but it has a couple of different notes. They're modified. Okay, so now we play a C, same C that we were playing with the pinky, but now we should play it with the 3rd finger. It's a better fingering. Okay, so we play C, E flat on the 5th string, F on the 5th string, then we move the hand down a fret. That's the good way to play. You move the whole hand 1 fret. To a G on the 4th string. Then we use the pinky on the 4th string to move up to the B flat. Then we're back to our same C. The same high C that we've been using clear back down here, we're still using up here. And the same low C, just as far as the tone. Of course, the notes are in different spots. That's the advantage of knowing this information. Now let's move on to the E form, okay? So it starts the same C on the 8th fret, 6th string, goes to the D on the 5th string, 6th string. Then we move up to the E on the 5th string, the G on the 5th string, the A on the 4th string, and the C on the 4th string. Now when we move that to minor pentatonic, we make a hand shift of about 1 fret. Okay? What we're doing now is we're playing C and E flat on the 6th string. The E flat is the 11th fret. Then we play the F on the 5th, the G on the 5th, the B flat on the 4th, the C on the 4th, and we've done the same thing. Here's what they all sound like. Let me do this for you now. I will play the major pentatonic scale in all 5 of the shapes, and you'll hear that the sound varies hardly at all. Then I'll do the same exact thing with the minor pentatonic scale. First, the major pentatonic scale. C form, A form next. G form next. E form next. Okay. Now, you'll notice that I left out the D form. There's a reason for that, and I'll show you in just a second. Because it is an octave higher. Okay? So first let's go back down, and we'll do now the minor pentatonic, C form. Then we'll do it A form. Then we'll do it G form. Then we'll do it E form. Okay. Now, if I go down to the A form and continue the notes, which are illustrated in less bold on your grids that you were watching, and you're going to get to see those again, so you don't have to rewind your tape. We don't need to look at them yet. This is the non-bold notes, the higher notes, in the A form. Here is the major pentatonic. But you can't get the high C. Okay? So that's all the notes you can get is the C, the D, the E, the G, and the A. Now, when you take that from the G form, you can get all your notes. C, D, E, G, A, and the high C. Okay? Same thing. You can do this in the E form also. C, D, E, G, A, and C. Now here's where the D form comes in. It has the same sound, and it looks like this. On the 4th string, that's the 10th fret. The D on the 4th string. The E on the 3rd string, the G on the 3rd string, the A on the 2nd string, and the high C on the 2nd string. Okay, now we'll go back down and we'll show the minor pentatonic from the A form, which is the first, or I should say the lowest practical position to play this scale in this particular key. That's the advantage of your fretboard logic grid. Okay, here we go. This is the minor pentatonic. Once again, you see we can't get the high C without changing shapes or positions, whichever you prefer to call it. Here's the G form. We can get all the notes now. Whoops, we can even get a wrong note. That's the correct note, the B flat, not the A. And there's your high C. Okay, next, here's your E form. Okay, now here is the D form. Some people play it this way, other people play it this way, as far as the fingering. Some guys play it this way. Don't ask me why, but they do. Okay, the next thing you would have, we needn't concern ourselves with too much, would be the C form shape way up here in what's called 12th position, because the first finger is playing all the notes on the 12th fret. So in other words, if you move any of your forms 12 frets higher exactly, including the fret that you started on, you will be playing the same shape, but it'll be an octave higher. All right? So, there's another thing we should discuss while we're here looking at this. An easy way to build effective solos, which is the next thing we're going to show you, is to identify the notes on a given string by just learning to name the notes And on a given string, you can take all of the notes that are on the first string on the grids. So on the C form grid, we have an open string, which on your grid shows to be number ones. Well, that's because if you're going to move it up to D, you need to know how to take the open form and move it onto the fingerboard or back off and on the fingerboard. That's what you experiment with, because all of the things that are shown in your grids are movable. That's why there's no position numbers or fret markings assigned to them, because they can be moved anywhere at will up and down the fingerboard. And that makes for complete freedom, even if you're not a real good guitarist. You will get to be if you learn this material. I guarantee it. Okay, so here's our major pentatonic notes on the first string. Okay, and they are E, G at the 3rd fret, A at the 5th fret, C at the 8th fret, D at the 10th fret, and E at the 12th fret. Okay, now our notes change for the minor pentatonic, but first let's get all the major pentatonic notes on the second string and the other four strings left. We want to do all 6 strings. So first we've already done the first string, let's do the second string now. Okay, here we go. C, D, E, G, A, and C. C is on the 13th fret. Okay, now we're going to the third string. G, A, C, D, E, and we can quit at G at the 12th fret. Okay, now we have the fourth string. D open, E 2nd fret, G at the 5th fret, A at the 7th fret, C at the 10th fret, and D at the 12th fret. Next we have the open A, this is the 5th string now, C at the 3rd fret, D at the 5th fret, E at the 7th fret, G at the 10th fret, and A at the 12th fret. The last thing we have left is E open, this is the 6th string, G, and these notes incidentally are the same as the first string notes. If you remembered them, you'll easily be able to do these. They're just on the other side of the strings. So we have G at the 3rd fret, following the open E, G at the 3rd fret, A at the 5th fret, C at the 8th fret, D at the 10th fret, and E at the 12th fret. Okay, we're going to play a real simple little solo using just the first string to start with. We're going to mix between major and minor pentatonic notes, which means sometimes we will have some B flats and some E flats, okay, instead of E's and A's. Our A's will become B flats and our E's will become E flats, okay? So if you study the grids, you'll know how to do that. So here we go, and I'm going to put on a little overdrive, and watch how convincing this is when I play just on one string, then when I add another string with it and play on 2 strings, then add a 3rd string, then add a 4th, a 5th, and then a 6th, and play on all 6 strings and freely move up and down the neck because I have learned where all the notes are, just for this key, for these 2 types of scales. You'll be amazed at how good I sound when I know hardly anything, because that's all I basically know. is hardly anything. Okay, here we go. This will be fun. Check it out.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Of course, I'm using a few tricks. You know, I'm sliding. I can bend. And you almost can't bend wrong if you bend a half step or a whole step. You're only a half step away from the right note, even if you make a mistake. Okay, here's two strings. Minor pentatonic. Certain notes can be played together. We'll go on to three notes now, three strings. Four. Whoops, I did five. Here's five. You can blues it up by well, we didn't make it through all the forms, but we almost did. I would say the most important thing here was the fact that I wasn't even doing any real string bends, any kind of slides, or anything that required a great amount of skill. But yet it sounded to me like I was having fun, and actually I was. I haven't played that simple for years. Okay? So these forms can be moved up and down through all the keys. In other words, if you take your C form and put it in the second position, you can play in the key of D, and you have if you move it up two more frets, you'll be in fourth position, and you'll be playing in the key of E. Move it up one more fret and you'll be in the key of F. If you want to play in the key of F, that's all you got to do is move E up a half step. Okay, and if you move up two more frets, you'll be in the key of G. You move up even two more frets, you'll be at what's called ninth position, which is on this guitar the fifth position marker from the end. Although if you have a Fender type guitar or a guitar with dots on the fingerboard, a lot of times they only start right here on the third fret. So you would be at the fourth dot, which would be G. And in the very old times, this is the way the guitar was taught. Everything was taught out of a C form. They didn't teach this stuff. This was hillbillies. Okay. Okay. I'd like for you to take a very long, hard look in review at this chart. Most of the examples I've demonstrated have been in the key of C. There's probably a good reason for that, because most everyone in a beginning stage of guitar who really would like to play electric rock guitar does know the C chord, the F chord, and the G, or some variant of those three, such as C7, F7. And if you know all the bar chords, you know all of those. In the G7. But in the key of C, notice that either of the pentatonic shapes, and we're going to demonstrate these with the grids, we're just going to stick to the key of C. We're going to leave it to you to have the fun and adventure of exploring the remaining four keys that are the most popular keys used in guitar, and using the guitar, that is, to play music. Okay? At any rate, in the key of C, we have shapes in the open position. We have shapes in the third position. You should be following along with me from the top left alongside the left side going down. We have shapes in the third position. Those are called A-form shapes. We have shapes in the fifth position. Those are called G-form shapes. And we have shapes in the eighth position. Those are called E-form shapes. And we have shapes in the 10th position. Those are called D-form shapes. When we move over to the key of A, we have the first practical position is what's called the second position, unless you want to use the open string notes. You may already know those. And if you do, that's good. You're ahead of me, and I have to play catch-up. So our first practical position on the fingerboard, which is what we're always talking about, is the second position. That's called G-form shapes. We move up to the fifth position, we have E-form shapes. We move up to the seventh position, we have D-form shapes. We move up to the ninth position and we have C-form shapes. This is the key of A. We move up to the 12th position and we have A-form shapes, which look a little bit different than the open A things. Because the open A, the open position A form doesn't work. It has to borrow from the G form. You'll figure that out if you explore this. Moving on over to G, the G form works fine at the open position. So what is it? Let's take a quick look and examine this. It is what we just did to the left of there. In other words, in the key of A, the G form is what we're now doing in the open position in the key of G. So you have a couple of ways of looking at this if you're still a little bit confused. You can try the G-form shapes in the open position in the key of G, and then you can move everything you do up 2 frets, and you'll be playing what we had already just discussed a few seconds ago, which is the practical position for the key of A, which is called the G form. Now, going back to the key of G, if I haven't confused you enough already, but really this is very simple. If you just look at the grids, you'll understand. The next thing we have in the key of G is the E form, third position. Then we have the D form, fifth position. Then we have the C form in the seventh position. Forms and shapes, remember, once again, are all the same. Then we have the A form in 10th position. Now by about this time, you may be noticing a couple of similarities. That there are A forms in all the keys, and there are G forms, C forms, E forms, and D forms. Or if you take it in a logical order, there's C forms, A forms, G forms, E forms, and D forms. Remember the word caged. You're a caged guitarist ready to spring out of your cage. And you're going to strike the world on fire with all of your newfound skills. Okay? At any rate, you see there's A forms in different keys, and E forms, D forms, whatever forms, X forms, Y forms. No, C forms, A forms, G forms, E forms, and D forms. Look to realize that the A forms in one key are identical fingerings, shapes, just in different positions as they may be in another key. Okay, so by moving up and down, you'll begin to put the fingerboard together by keys, because there are 5 shapes in all of your keys. Moving on over to E real quickly, and we'll wrap up this long-winded dissertation. Actually, this is a lecture for you people. The key of E, we have a D form, okay? This excludes the open position. We have the C form, we have the A form, we have the G form, and the E form. Notice also that we're going up through these shapes in the same progression as the keys progress using the word caged. Finally, we get over to the key of D, and notice what we have. The forms now take on the order of the word caged, which is the order of the keys. Although there is nothing particularly alphabetical about this. If we flip them around in alphabetical order, then we can really go psycho. But in the key of D, we have a C form. It's just like what we did in the key of C, only it's in the 2nd position, or the 2nd fret. That's the fret where all the first fingers do their work. I should say where all the notes that the first finger works. You know what I mean. The A form is the 5th position. The G form is the 7th position. The E form is the 10th position. And the D form, the last thing I'm going to tell you before I take this away from you for the rest of this video, the last thing is the D form. Okay? Thank you very much for bearing with me. All right, folks, what we're going to do now is we're going to shift to the key of D, which I last left you with, so you can see all of the C, A, G, E, and D forms caged on the fingerboard. So first, here is our major pentatonics in the key of D. So what we have is 2nd position, C form or shape. And it looks like this. Next we have the A form, and it looks like this. And it is at the 5th position. Next we have the G form, which is at the 7th position, and it looks like this. Next we have the E form, which is at the 10th position, and it looks like this. And last we have the 1 octave higher sound, D form at the 12th position. Next we'll show you the minor pentatonics in the same positions, the same key, the key of D. That will be next. All right, here's our minor pentatonic scales. In the key of D, same positions, 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 10th, and 12th positions. C form shapes, A form shapes, G form shapes, E form shapes, and D form shapes. Here they are. C form shape. Here's our A form shape, 5th position. Here's our G form shape at 7th position. And here's our E form shape at 10th position. Whoops, I made a mistake, but that's okay. I just forgot to make it a F. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I guarantee you, you will, whether you want to or not. And last, here's our D form in the 12th position. Well, doggies, I hope you've had a good time here watching what all I did, and I hope you're especially aware of how simply you can play and how good it sounds if you mean what you say musically. Okay? I'd like very much to see you all again back for level 2 after you've used up level 1. Okay, and you can get that right here from us at Video School of Guitar. So with that, I bid you adieu and have lots of fun with your guitar.
1, 2, 3.